The Blessings of Obedience by Andrew Murray is a book about the biblical principle of obedience and really what the gospel is all about. Andrew Murray is a South African, Dutch Reformed missionary, evangelist, just general minister and theologian. This book couldn't have come at a better time in my life, because if there's one thing that I have learned about obedience is that it's one thing if you don't know any better and you don't know Jesus and you're doing things out of his will. But it's another thing if you know what he has called you to do and you delay the answer to his call, then is when the discipline and punishment comes. The perfect case example of that is Jonah, right? He gets called to go to Nineveh to preach repentance, and out of fear and ultimately disobedience, he goes the other way and finds himself in the belly of a whale. And that's really as simple as obedience is. It's doing what you're told when you're told to do it. There's really no simple way to summarize the gospel because it needs to be revealed spiritually to your heart for your eyes to be able to see and understand. But if you could summarize it simply, it would be on the basis of obedience. Because just as one act of disobedience by Adam and Eve condemned all of humanity, it was one act of obedience that saved all of humanity when Jesus obeyed the will of the Father to go to the cross and take on the punishment that we all deserved. And unfortunately, in our culture and in a lot of the church, this is not preached. And because this is not preached, that means that the gospel is not being taught. Because when Jesus was walking with his disciples, there was one of his disciples who said, "Lord, I need to go bury my father." And Jesus told him, "Follow me. Let the dead bury the dead." And so that's how serious and the extent of conviction that the Lord expects of his followers and of his disciples. And if we are to seriously and thoroughly examine ourselves and see how we do not obey what he has told us, and I can't tell you that I have wholeheartedly obeyed the Lord and followed through on what he has commanded. And he says, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. And unfortunately, we have a culture that incentivizes and encourages you to do things to make you more comfortable and to lead a life of comfort. And what Jesus commands us to is almost never the easy path and the path to comfort, but it is a uncomfortable process that is ultimately how he has his purpose fulfilled in this earth, and the kingdom of heaven can be on earth as it is in heaven, but it's never easy and it's never comfortable. Now, there's a bit of a paradox here because Jesus also says, "My yoke is easy, my burden is light." But the paradox is that it is the burden on the conscience that he lifts and makes light. But the cross that we have to carry is still the cross of denying ourselves and being obedient to the point of death, just as Jesus was. So that's really a simple message that I wanted to share from this book, and that's as simple as he put it himself in many more words. The one part I'll share that especially convicted me, where our culture and the church as a whole has really strayed from the gospel, is this right here. He says, when we give into the flesh by overindulgence in eating and drinking, when we gratify self by seeking, accepting, or rejoicing in that which indulges our pride, when self-will is allowed to assert itself and we make provision for the fulfillment of its desire, we are guilty of disobedience to his command. This gradually clouds the soul and makes the full enjoyment of his light and peace impossible. There's two deaths that we can choose to experience. There's the death of denying ourselves and making ourselves a living sacrifice, or there is the death of judgment. The gospel that Jesus has is you don't need to face that death of judgment if you pick up your cross, deny yourself, and follow him, and obey him even unto the point of death.